Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome, bienvenidos. Where are we today? We're on Gulangyu Island in China, and in this video we're going to explore this little island, learn about its colonial history, and hopefully get to see some of the traditions on the island to this day, which includes music. So as always, follow me to the end and you will get to see loads of beautiful things today. Let's go and explore the island together. Let's go! Welcome to Gulangyu. That's right. This is one of the 5 treaty ports signed after the end of the Opium War. And this is where British people were able to come and do business. Back in those days, China had been a closed place, and the only port open was Canton. But after the Opium War finished, 5 more were opened up, and this is one of them. So today we're going to see a lot of European architecture, British colonial influence. And this is a unique island in China because it brought a lot of wealth. It also became known as the Piano Island, presumably because pianos are very expensive and people were able to buy those with the wealth they accumulated. So come with me, let's explore Gulangyu together, the little British colonial island off the coast of Xiamen, formerly Amoy in China. Let's go. The Chinese have a solution for everything. Look at this, you can even rent a child buggy for the day. They're a very entrepreneurial bunch over here. You can literally rent anything from phone chargers to, buggies, bicycles, you name it. One of the things you will realise from getting here is that there's no bicycles, there's no cars, there's no traffic. It's a pedestrian island, so you have to literally get about everywhere on foot. There's none of those annoying e-bikes, none of those bicycles getting in the way. It's nice and free of traffic. So let's check out the map of the island. So the former American consulate. Here we are in China, but yet it feels like you're just in a little part of Europe. The British really did leave their mark on the area for sure. It is relatively peaceful. It's 9:30 in the morning, so there's not a wild lot of people at the minute. That will change. Come back here in a few hours' time and this will be absolutely awash with people. So one thing I didn't think of bringing with me was my flip-flops. There is actually a beach. Not a very large beach, but you can get into the water there. There's a few kids down dipping their toes in the water. So maybe bring your sandals and bring your bucket and spade. If not, I'm sure there's some Chinese entrepreneur on the island that will sell you side items. I made the mistake of going to the first place as soon as you get off the ferry terminal to eat the food. It's not recommended. What I would say to you is once you get off the ferry terminal, keep walking. The first place does look a bit run down, and I did make that observation. But nevertheless, had breakfast. It's a bit overpriced and not the best, but that's to be expected in any tourist place in the world. So, there are plenty of other places on the island. And people do live here, of course. This is a locals island, so there are people that stay here all year round. But the only way to get to the island is by boat, which I booked for 35 kwai return, which is about £3.50. You will pay more if you don't book in advance. You can get it for about 80 kwai. That does book up at the weekends, so if you're coming at the weekends, I do advise to get on those booking sites and book it up. So even in the last sort of 5 minutes, it started to get a lot more busy. Obviously more boats have arrived. So yes, approaching 10 o'clock in the morning, starting to busy up a little bit. Hi, 你好。这个什么？
这个芒果。
芒果。
哎，这个给你。
多少钱
？20。
20。
水果，芒果、西瓜、哈密瓜。谢谢。
谢谢。
谢谢。
I'm a sucker for fresh fruit. Who said China was a communist country? It's probably the most capitalist country I've been to. Every corner there's someone selling something, making some money. There's a lot of hustlers in China, a lot of entrepreneurs, and I like it. So right here we're walking along the boardwalk. You can't actually go inside the rock. There is a tunnel which would have originally been the main route, but they've built this nice boardwalk for us to see the outside. Today Xiamen and Gulangyu are very peaceful places. Today tourists are coming around here and enjoying the day and going out for a walk and having a coffee. But in 1841 things were very different. This was the site of the British Royal Navy's attack. They sailed into the bay and attacked the two islands. 26th of August 1841.
During the First Opium War, British forces turned their attention to the fortified port of Amoy, today's Xiamen. And right at the heart of the assault were soldiers from Ireland. As the Royal Navy began its bombardment, the 18th Regiment of Foot, the Royal Irish Regiment, prepared for one of the key amphibious landings of its entire campaign. British ships blasted the coastal batteries of Gulangyu Island, clearing the way for the assault. When the guns fell silent, it was the Irishmen who were first among the troops to go ashore. Under the thunder of naval guns, companies of the Royal Irish stormed the island's defences. Qing forces, overwhelmed by the barrage, began to fall back, and the Irish advanced steadily through the smoke. Though the battle was short, their discipline was unmistakable. The Royal Irish helped take the key fortifications that controlled the entrance to Amoy Harbour, opening the city to British occupation. Today, little remains of the old battlements, but in the story of the First Opium War, the Battle of Amoy marks a moment where Irish soldiers played a decisive part in shaping events far from home. The Royal Irish Regiment at Amoy in 1841, one of the most significant Irish contributions to Britain's campaign in China.
Yes, I knew it wouldn't stay quiet for long. The tourists have arrived en masse. En masse? Is it en masse or en masse? I know it's French, but anyway, you know what I mean. So why on earth is there a massive metal piano in the park? It's a bit weird, isn't it? Well, this is known as Piano Island. Now, back in the day, this was known as the Little Europe in Asia, because all of the wealth that was coming into this island was able to buy people lots of pianos. So there is a musical tradition in this island where a lot of the people do play Western instruments like pianos, guitars, that sort of thing, violins. It's a pity it doesn't work. I could give you a wee tune, you know what I mean? If you are considering coming to China, I would say this is in the top 5 places you need to visit. Right behind me is the site of the Amoy Customs. Now, what on earth could this have to do with Ireland? Well, actually, there was a connection. So during the years of the Qing dynasty, there was a guy called Robert Hart. Sir Robert Hart, first baronet. Where was he from? Portadown, County Armagh. Now, he spent over 50 years in China and became the Inspector General of the Imperial Chinese Maritime Customs Service. Now, he served between 1863 and 1908, so that was up almost before the revolutionary period. And although he wasn't actually based here in Amoy, he was based in Beijing, but he would have sent Irish officers to work here in Amoy. So there is, as always, an Irish connection everywhere you go. So he was considered to be one of the most important foreigners in Qing China, and there was actually a statue of him stood in Shanghai until the communist takeover in 1949. So he was remembered up until then. So this building behind me was the Amoy Customs Examiners building, and look at it. It's built in a British style and it looks fantastic. What do you think? You really can sort of picture yourself back in the 1840s when this place was being built and being colonised, I guess. You can just put yourself back to those times. It seems like a really opulent place to be based. What do you think? Were you expecting this in China? Do you expect a little colonial island off the coast of China? Unbelievable, isn't it? Like I was saying earlier, this island does have a strong musical tradition, mostly from the Western musical styles that were imported onto the island. But the people who live here today, they still continue that tradition. So you will see people playing music around the island. But right here as well, there's a musical school. The Xiamen Music School is based here on the island. I can't see any students here today, but I'm sure the sound of music flows throughout this island during the term time. Yeah, if you're interested in British colonial history, no trip to China is complete without coming to Xiamen, formerly Amoy, and the Gulangyu Island. So Gulangyu was one of the treaty ports, and Britain never actually colonised China because it was able to control the 5 treaty ports and thus control goods coming in and out of the country. So it didn't actually have to colonise it like it did other countries, but it still had significant influence. So in days gone by, these streets would have been almost exclusively European, but these days they're very few and far between. I've probably seen about 4 tourists from overseas since I've been here. It is overwhelmingly a Chinese tourist place, and the numbers reflect that. The tourist numbers to the Xiamen area are about 127 million each year, and about 2 million of those are from overseas, so still about 1.5% of the overall population. These people really did live well. Look at these gardens. Look at that building and the grass surrounding it. I wonder who lived in a house like this. So this building behind me was the British consul's residence, and it's easy to see why. It gets commanding views over the island. It's 2 stories, so on the top floor you could see out right across over to Xiamen. Let's have a look in here. Lee House. Look at this, folks. 1, 2, 3 floors of opulence. I wonder who used to live in this house. You can just imagine some businessman or some shipping entrepreneur having wild parties here. And now it seems to be some sort of hotel. Let's go inside. So that staircase has been here for over 100 years. Yes, it would have been one of the original staircases. And look at the veranda. Check it out. People do still live here. As someone from Northern Ireland, I'm from the first colony of England. It's interesting to visit these places around the world and just see, the architecture from Britain, and imagine what was life like for people living here. They came all the way from the UK out to these colonies to set up shipping companies, to set up trading, to do governance. It's just fascinating that from one country in the world, all these little places can be created. Right, let's have a look over here. What are your thoughts on the British Empire? Was it a good thing? Was it a bad thing? There's no right or wrong answers. Please let me know, what do you think about British colonialism? Did it affect your country? Did it affect it in a good way, in a bad way? Think about the language which we're speaking now. Think about the language which is the language of business. That was all because of the spread of the empire. So, we're not speaking Dutch as an international language, or Spanish or French, because those were competitive nations in establishing a global dominance. So Britain, established that network. What do I see up ahead here? Looks like some sort of football pitch, or a town square maybe. Yeah, today it's been used as a football pitch, but I imagine back in days gone by this might have been a parade ground or something, maybe. What do you think? So this, folks, was the foreigners' football pitch. Yes, I was right. Whenever you just guess something out of instinct, well, what I guessed was right. This pitch here was the foreigners' football pitch, and it did exactly what it says in the tin, folks. This was where the British and the Americans played football and other British sports like badminton and rugby and cricket. And it was actually in use, up until the communist takeover in 1949, and then it was renamed the People's Park. So a lot of things did change. Foreigners no longer had influence here. Foreigners didn't have consulates on the island. And, to this day, there's not really any foreign influence apart from these buildings, but there's no consulates remaining here anymore. There's no foreigners living here that I'm aware of. So it has, gone back to Chinese ownership and Chinese control. But you can't imagine in the days of empire that this would have been full of British people playing their national sport of football. So let's have a look. Just endless gardens and open spaces. You imagine some sort of English country estate, but just on an island in China. It's bizarre. So I do believe this is still in use as a hotel, and there are churches on the island which we will go and visit. But people live here as well. You see all the washing hanging on the lines. I'm trying to do this place justice by putting it on video, but sometimes there's no substitute for visiting a place in person. I really do feel like I'm stepping back in time. I feel like I'm living in those days of empire when this was in control of Britain. Now, obviously, no longer is that the case. The Chinese flag flies from all of the government buildings, but you still do get a feeling of its British past. Right here in the middle is the football pitch where the foreigners would have played football on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. This would have been the meeting place for all of the foreigners on the island. And these buildings would not be out of place in an English country setting or an Irish country setting. But here we are, off an island, off the coast of China. It feels so surreal, but yet this is Gulangyu. What do you think? Have you been to a place like this before? Does it remind you of Ireland or England or anywhere in the British Isles or somewhere else in the former colonies? So earlier we mentioned Robert Hart from Portadown. Now he went on to become in charge of the Imperial Chinese Customs Service. Now it was based in Beijing. He sent some of his men, Francis O'Flynn from Cork and Charles Patrick Ryan from Tipperary. They were educated in Ireland, but they came to work here on this island. So there were Irishmen working in the British, in a British capacity, because back then all of Ireland was part of Britain. So they would have worked as part of the British Civil Service here in Gulangyu. Irishmen were disproportionately overrepresented in the overseas colonial service. In China, the first envoy from Britain was an Irishman. Montgomery from Lochgyle in County Antrim. The first governor of Hong Kong, the plenipotentiary, I can't even say that word, plenipotentiary who was sent to negotiate the outcomings of the Treaty of Nanking. So the treaty that was negotiated at the end of the Opium War, which ceded Hong Kong, which granted these 5 ports. He was an Irishman. He was an Anglo-Irishman. So to some, they may not be seen as Irish. They may be seen as part of the aristocracy or the landed gentry or the Anglosphere. But nevertheless, born in Belfast, to many that would be considered as Irish. Okay, so those people were first to sort of have influence here in China. And then you've got Robert Hart, who was from Portadown, and he went on to become, a major figure in the Imperial Customs Service in China. So then, because he was influential in Beijing, he then sent, other Irish people who had been educated in Ireland to work on this island. So it was kind of jobs for the boys, Irish person in charge, all giving the jobs to other Irish people. So a lot of Irish people involved in the administration. And yeah, no matter where you go in the world, folks, there's always an Irish connection. So in this channel, I want to find that connection. No matter where we are in the world, I'm going to look for the connection somewhere with Ireland. If you have any suggestions for videos, do get in touch with me. Right here I'm in China, but who knows where this will take me. We might end up in your country, we might end up, right around the world. And yeah, let's continue with our trip around Gulangyu. So what you will see a lot of here is fallen trees. Now this one here is over 150 years old. And about 10 years ago there was a bad storm which pulled it down. But instead of just getting rid of it, they've actually put scaffold around it, so they've protected the old trees and in line and keeping with the old heritage of the building. So whenever this was a blossoming colony, this tree would have just been a little small tree, but now it's still here. So British Empire long gone, the British officials long gone, now governed as part of China, but this tree is still here. It's still the same tree that was here 150 years ago. Isn't that mad? So this used to be a church. You can tell from the Christian cross at the top and the writing, but it does say as well that it's an old people's home, so I think this has been converted into residential accommodation. And there was obviously a lot of missionaries that were brought out here, to spread Christianity, and a lot of them would have been based here and would have went to the mainland to try and preach and try and spread the word. So this is to let you know, Gulangyu is an AAAAA 5 A's national tourist attraction as designated by the China National Tourist Attractions Quality Evaluation Committee. So rest assured, this is one of the top tourist attractions in the country. And more than that, it's actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site. I love my UNESCO World Heritage Sites. So right now we're going to ascend to Sunlight Rock. There is a saying that says, if you don't go to Sunlight Rock, you haven't really been to Xiamen. So let's go and get up on the rock. Get those steps up. There it is, look at the size of yawn. Look at the size of the rock, the big stone. That's a tower. Look at the size of yon stones on him. Massive rocks. Massive stones. We're just climbing up to the top of Sunlight Rock here. And you do get some lovely vantage points looking out over the buildings below. We haven't quite got to the top yet, but there is an amazing view here. So we're at the top of Gulangyu Island. We've got the best view in the house here. Let's have a look around. You can see down in front of me some of the colonial mansions, and you can just picture how people lived in days gone past. All of the gardens and grass, and there I can see the football pitch. I'm not sure if it's the same football pitch that we were at earlier, but nevertheless, lots of lovely red brick buildings below. So I did try and find the foreigner cemetery, but lo and behold, it doesn't exist anymore. The cemetery has been buried. So I looked at some records online saying that actually in 1959, I believe, the communists actually buried the cemetery because it related to British imperialism and they wanted to get rid of that sort of memory. So unfortunately the cemetery is no longer, and I believe sits on its site is the music hall. So whenever you go to the music hall in Gulangyu, think below you are many dead people from the British era. So interesting fact, folks. Well, I hope you've enjoyed learning about the colonial past of this little part of China. It's been a pleasure taking you around, and I hope to see you in the next video soon. Bye bye.